Flock Talk. Today we're going to be talking about positive reinforcement and we're going to define it a little bit more clearly. I've had so many questions lately of people asking me why their bird is biting. And first off, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not there, I'm not watching your bird's behavior, I'm not watching the whole situation. I can't actually analyze your bird's behavior and necessarily tell you the exact reason for their biting. However, in this video, I've noticed that there's a common trend among all the questions I've been asked, so I'm just going to generalize one topic, and I think it's honestly going to help quite a few of you from what I've been asked. What we're going to be covering today is kind of the object of choice and why we want as much choice as possible when we're using positive reinforcement training. Now, when you say positive reinforcement training, you're thinking that the whole situation is positive. You're sitting there, you're working with them, you're giving them a treat every time they do something right. You're adding something positive to the environment to increase the repetition of a behavior. Yes, this is true. This is the actual definition of positive reinforcement. That's what it is. However, you can do that and still accidentally be coercive. You can still accidentally be putting them in a situation where they have no choice, they have no control, and it can accidentally be quite aversive. They can end up not wanting to be there, they can end up being quite stressed out. And it seems a little odd at first because all you're doing are positive things in your mind. You're just giving treats, you're not yelling at them, you're not shaking them, you're not spraying them with a bottle. But the fact that there's no choice involved makes the situation not ideal. And that's kind of what I feel is happening in a lot of the questions I've been getting asked, is usually they start out as, I was taming my bird, we were making good progress, and then all of a sudden it flipped. Or I was training my bird, I wanted to start working with them out of the cage, so I cut their wings, and we started working, and then it got worse. And all these things kind of tend to revolve around the object of choice. And I'm not here to debate wing clipping, we're not getting into that today. Mr. Newt, we're not getting into that big, whole, huge debate today. We are talking about choice and how it can impact your bird's behavior. Choice is one of the single most motivating things when it comes to any animal that you're working with. Doesn't matter if you're training your dog, it doesn't matter if you're training your cat, it doesn't matter if you're working with a herd of livestock. Choice is extremely motivating because it gives an animal the option to control its environment. And when you have control over your environment, you have control over what you do, where you are, how you behave, that control gives you stability, it gives you confidence, it gives you a more relaxed sense of state where you feel like you're safe. And that is really extremely important. When you take that away from an animal, when you take away their ability to control their environment, you're telling them that they aren't necessarily safe, that they have no choice, that they cannot control where they are, that they cannot control where they go, that they have no options other than the thing you're asking for. And that's where positive reinforcement can accidentally be coercive. Because if you're teaching a bird to step up, and let's say you've clipped their wings and you're working with them on a T-perch in the middle of a room, your bird doesn't have any choice. And in your mind, you're asking them to step up, you're not pushing into them, you're not making them do it, you're just holding a treat at the other end. But what other choice does the bird actually have? They can't go anywhere, they can't fly, they can't walk away because they're in a T-perch in the middle of a room. The only choices there are to step up onto your finger and take the millet, or bite you to get you to stop and go away and give them space. That's where most of these issues start up. Generally what happens is you get a bird, you bring it home, it's sitting in a cage, and you start to work with it. And at the beginning you're doing really good. You're giving them treats, they can walk away from you in the cage a little bit, they might take some, they might walk away, and then you decide to move on to the next step and you accidentally remove those choices. Now, initially I find that things go really well because you're kind of desperate in a way. When you first get a new bird, you're so excited to interact with it, you're so excited to teach it all these cool things, you're so excited to have them walk up on your finger and form this good relationship, and you start out really good, you start out really patient, and you're giving them treats, you're letting them leave, you're giving them treats, and then you get tired of it, and you get bored, or you get exhausted, or you get frustrated because you're not making progress as fast as you would like, or because you were doing really good and you made some steps forward, and then you start having some back steps. And I find that usually what happens is people get frustrated and people want faster progress. And what happens is you start to eliminate their options to backstep. You stop letting them leave. If they back away to the corner of the cage, you start following them with the millet. You go, well, you were taking this from my hand yesterday, and you start to go towards them and give it to them. In your mind, you're still being positive, you're still just handing them treats. However, now you're invading their space, you're not letting them back away from you, you're not letting them choose to not be interacting with you. The only option they have is to take that millet from your hand or find another way to tell you to get the heck away from them. And they're gonna bite you. That's gonna be what happens. When there's no other option to be made, when they can't leave a situation, when there's only one way to earn that reinforcer, they're going to choose whatever gives them control over the situation, which is to bite you and tell you to back off. Biting doesn't happen for no reason. There's very few circumstances where it does, and that should tell you something. If your bird is biting you, they're telling you to go away, and they have every right to do that. Any animal telling you to back off is telling you to back off for a reason. And generally when it comes down to actually biting, they've given you warning signals. They've tried to leave, they've tried to back up, they've maybe fluffed up a little bit, they've raised their feathers, they might be pinning their eyes, they've probably gotten low on their perch and opened their beak. They've given you all these countless signals to tell you, I'm not comfortable, I don't want you here, leave me alone. And you push past all of that, you ignore it, or maybe you didn't recognize it, and you got bitten. And you pulled your hand away because they bit you and it hurt. And they got what they wanted. They bit you, you left. So every time you do that, every time you push past that, you're teaching them that all these other bits of body language, all these little warning signals, all these little suggestive things to tell you to go away don't matter. That it doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter how they do it, you're not going to leave unless it comes down to them biting you. What should be happening is you accidentally push a little too far, you accidentally invade their space, they fluff up, they give you warning signals, you back away. Because you've accidentally invaded their space, you've accidentally moved too fast, they've told you that they're not comfortable, and you give them that space. This is how you build a bit more choice in a situation that isn't ideal. You've tried to do something, your animal's telling you, no, I don't like it, you give them that choice to say no, and you leave. If you don't give them that choice, you're gonna get bit, you're gonna get hurt, and it's gonna suck for you. I know I've done a video on taming and training before, and I know I've done one on step up before, where I definitely try and drill in these concepts as much as possible. But I'm trying to take this one in a bit of a different route where we're talking more about choice. Because choice isn't just specifically about taming. It is very prominent in taming because it's the most notable one, where if you don't give them a choice, they'll lash out at you, or if you don't give them a choice, they'll shut down and they'll just submit to the situation because they don't have another option. It's the most prominent example, which is why I use it so much. However, providing choice in any object of training is important. The more choices you can give them, the more reinforcing the whole situation becomes. Control in itself is reinforcing. It gives them control over their environment, it helps them feel stable and secure, it helps them feel like they have say in what happens. Now think about any time you've not been given a choice. If your mother told you you had to clean your room right now, there was no other option. You didn't want to do it. You hated it, the whole experience sucked, you might have lulled through and made it happen, but you probably did a terrible semi-half-done job just because you wanted to get it done and over with because you didn't have another option. And it doesn't just apply to negative things like that where it's a chore you don't want to do. Sometimes it's even going out and going to a park. Sometimes you're just not feeling it that day, or you just don't want to go to that park, or there's something just off and you don't feel like doing it. And you're given absolutely no choice. Any other day, you might have enjoyed going to that park. If someone had said, oh, well, you really want to go do this first? Well, what if we do that and then pass through the park on the way home? Then you might enjoy that whole day a lot more than if they just said, no, we're not doing what you want. We're going to go here and do what I want. You're not going to have a fun time. You might try and cooperate and do what you can, but your whole mental state is just not there. You're not really wanting to engage in a situation. You're not really wanting to have fun. That exact same response is what happens to any animal that you work with. When you eliminate those choices and say there's only one way to get positive reinforcement, there's only one way to get a reward, the whole situation becomes really muddled. It becomes very unpleasant. They don't feel in control. They don't feel happy. They don't want to work with you. when you start doing that is when you're going to start getting really aggressive behavior out of your birds that seems like it comes out of nowhere. Because the whole time you've been doing really good, you've been making some good progress, you're teaching a bird to wave, they've started lifting their foot, and then you stopped giving them the option. Generally, when we're training a new behavior, you're reinforcing any little progresses towards it. Now, if Newt lifted his foot this high once, and I gave him a buttload of treats for it, and then he lifts his foot this high, I give him a smaller amount of treats for it. He lifts his foot this high, he gets maybe like half a treat for it. He's learning that any degree of lifting his foot is good. Any degree of lifting his foot earns a reward. Those are multiple different options he can take to achieve the same result, to still get a reward. They all have different varying degrees of importance. Lifting his foot up here gets him a sunflower seed, lifting his foot here gets him flaxseed, lifting his foot down here gets him sesame. They get him different things, but they all give him something. They all give him something to work towards, they all give him something positive. If I were to change that and go, you lifted your foot this high, you get treats for that. Lifting your foot this high, you get nothing. He's only got one choice now. He can only lift his foot this high. Doing anything else is pointless. He can't lift his foot this high and try and earn a reward. He can't lift his foot this high and earn anything different. He can only lift his foot to one height or else he gets nothing. There's no choice in that situation anymore. Either he's going to choose not to engage with me and do nothing because it's worthless to him, or he's going to learn to bite me to get me to go away because now he's upset, now he's not happy, now this isn't a fun experience, now he has no control on what happens. Providing those choices, giving them varying degrees of reinforcement, giving them as many opportunities to earn a reward is really what's going to set you up for the most success. I find a lot of the time when working with any animal really, it's very easy for yourself to become frustrated. It's very easy for you to look at something and think it's so easy or it's so simple, and to just get irritated or upset because it's not communicating well or because your animal's making progress and backing off. It gets so easy for you to really lose track of the steps it takes to get there. And when you start losing that, it becomes a lot easier for you to shut down choices. The easiest example for this is teaching a bird to step up. It's one of the first things most birds learn, and it's one of the most easily coerced behaviors. The most common advice you'll see for it is to press into their stomachs and make them step up onto your finger. Now, realistically looking at that, that's not negative, it's not punishment really. You're not doing anything that would hurt them and really negate a behavior. Technically speaking, that's still positive reinforcement. You're pushing into your finger, they're doing the behavior, you're giving them a treat. However, there's no choice. So if I put my finger in front of Mia, she's going, oh, I don't want to because I just asked her to step up 6 times and didn't give her anything. She's not gonna want to anymore. She chose to leave because I had nothing for her, because it just wasn't fun. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't engaging with her. I wasn't giving her scritches. I wasn't even talking to her. So she stepped up a few times. She stepped up again very nicely there, but I'm not gonna make her do it again because I didn't give her anything. But what tends to happen here is she has that choice always to say no. Now, Mia's been stepping up for 7 years. Mia has very good knowledge that stepping up generally leads to positive things, so I don't need to be giving her a treat. But when you're teaching a new bird how to step up and you're pushing into them and you're not giving them that choice, they have no control. They don't have the option to say no, they don't have the option to walk away, and you end up with a very negative situation. As much as you're making them step up, giving them a treat, stepping up, giving them a treat, you're not giving them the choice. They're not making the decision. Now, if you sit there and you hold your hand in front and you get them to put one foot on you and give them a treat, they can put their foot on you to earn a treat, they can put their beak on you to earn a treat, they can even just look at your hand to start to learn to engage with it to earn a treat. Those are all different choices that they can make to reach the same end result. Now you've got a bird that's realizing there's so many options I have here, there's so many things I can do to earn this reward, there's so much more choice and opportunity to reach the reward or the reinforcer or the treat or whatever you have and have fun. There's so many more options they can make. They have more control. They can choose to put their foot on you and earn a treat. they can choose to decide that they aren't quite comfortable with that and just work on shimmying a little closer to it. There's so many more little behaviors they can present to earn the same reward. You're still working towards the same end goal. You're still going to get to that point where they fully step on your finger, but building that engagement, building that curiosity, and reinforcing as many different choices that lead towards the same end goal is going to get you where you want to go. A lot of the time you end up with those birds that will step up on their people, but then when they go to get them off a perch, they start biting. Or they're doing really good stepping up, and then when you've put them in their cage and try to step up, they start fighting. Because when they're on your hands, there's no choice. They might be clipped, they can't fly away, or it's just happened so much that they know if they do anything else, nothing good happens. So as soon as they put them down, as soon as they put them somewhere else where they have more control or where they feel safer to have that control, they start lashing out, they start getting uncomfortable because now they're standing in their spot, now they have control over where they are, now they can walk away and leave, and you're chasing them down, now you're shoving your fingers into them and trying to get them to do something that's already not been a super enjoyable experience, and you're starting to shut them down to a point where the only way they can make you stop is to bite you. This video was a bit more rambly than I intended it to be, but I hope that there was still some degree of information that you guys were able to pick out from there. I apologize that it's kind of all over the place and not as concise and to the point as I try to be, but choice is such an important part of training, and I find that it's really easily forgotten, not intentionally. I even find myself, I'm working really hard to try and implement as much choice as possible. I find, especially with my dog, I request some very specific behaviors, and I start to kind of forget that choice is just as important as delivering a treat. So nobody's perfect, we're all going to make mistakes, we're all going to start to get too focused and hyper-fixated on the end goal and forget that all the little steps and all the little choices all the way through training, even once they know the behavior, that all those little choices are extremely important in giving them comfort and confidence in their environment. And without that comfort and confidence, they're going to lose kind of the motivation to want to engage and want to participate. So it's such an important thing that gets so easily overlooked just because people have a tendency to want to reach that end goal quickly, to want to be there, to want to have that. And we tend to find shortcuts that we think are great, that we think are fantastic, but really end up hurting us in the long run. I hope that there was some degree of information in this muddled rambling. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. Noodle. Hey, don't eat the buttons. Mr. Newt.